Thank you so much. Hi, good evening, everybody. It's so great to see you. I think when Steve introduced me, it's one of those things where, I used to mess around with people because I'm not a good golf player. And so when I wanted to win, I would say, look at this guy. He's going to make an amazing shot. And they always miss every single time. That's my tactic. If you're no good at golf, just praise the guy a lot. And then they all stressed out and they won't be able to hit. And so, thanks, Steve. No, I'm just kidding. My name is David Jung. For some of you who don't know me, I am actually from Canada, and I'll tell you a little more about that. No, it's not a little part of the States. It's actually a new country by itself. I wanted to, because sometimes people get all these bios and stuff. I'm going to give my bio throughout who I am. And so you get little pieces of me, so you probably want to get to know me a little bit more than you want to. But I wanted to ask you a question. If you are part of this church, for any length of time, or if you went through the study series, you'd know the answers. And if you're visiting with us, especially if you're online, welcome. I hope you have a fantastic time today. If you're new with us, we're a church, we believe in Jesus, we really do. And we study Jesus out. And for us to be able to, place membership in the church, whether through baptism or through restoration or wherever your faith journey leads you, we do have a common thing that defines us. We have a study series. And I know that's changed over the years. But if I were to ask the members of the church, and I were to say, hey, I have a friend who is at L and D. I know. You're like, what? Some people are like, what are you talking about? What am I talking about? Light and darkness. Did I say light and darkness? I didn't. L and D, because we've even shortened it now. Now, someone will say, you mean part 1, part 2, part 5? Like, what are you talking about? Because, some parts, you just do 1 or 2. I had to do an extended version because of who I am. But L and D, did I pre-interview anybody? I didn't. You are from perhaps different places all across Orange County, but also across the world. I can be in Kuala Lumpur. I could be in the middle of Africa, and I say, hey, my friend's at L&D. They'd be like, ooh, that's awesome. We're here just to test it out for you. If I had a friend who just counted the cost, what's next? How do you know that? Because you went through the study series, right? And there's a reason why we created the study series. Is so that when somebody says, my friend's building their faith, they're growing in their love for God, no, I don't know what you mean. When we say there's a way, is it the only way to do that? No, but we have a definition of that where we're clear when we say, hey, someone's at L&D, they've looked at sin. They're at the study where they counted the cost. You know what I mean. Even when somebody says, hey, go make disciples, right? A lot of us would know what that means to a certain degree. Whether we do it or not, it's something else, but that's a thing. But we know what we're talking about because we go through things. You don't start off with counting the cost first. I don't know what you do in OC, but that's not what you should do. You get them on the same page. So why do we have that study series? So we share a common language. So when somebody says, go make disciples, we know what the rest of that is because there's steps to it. There's intentionality. There's no confusion. From the youngest Christian, maybe they don't remember it, but they can recall it to a certain, oh yeah, that thing, right? You don't have to do all the studies, but it's nice to do a lot of them to get you're on the same page. So you're counting the cost. You know what you're getting baptized into. You know this. And for some of that, we're baptized into. What are you talking about? Probably go through the study series and you know what we're talking about. We speak a common language, and that's how we really spread so fast. And I know that when I say go make disciples, you know what happens? We have an image in our head of what that means. Bring them to the church, bring them to Bible talk with life, involving some food of some sort. It's actually loving them to the point where they start to see Jesus in us, and we study systematically with them, right? Would you agree? No one's confused. What are you talking about? Well, you probably need to go to the study series, and I'm inviting you to do that. But here's an interesting passage. If you were to go through just Matthew 18, you think about it, when someone sins against you, what are you supposed to do? Go gossip about it and tell everybody. No, that's what we do sometimes, but what do? We go and show our brother or sister they sin too, their fault. So if I were to ask you, how do you go? I don't know, just kind of go, just go talk to them. There's varying levels of confusion when I ask people when someone sins again. Let me tell you, you will study the Bible and you will come into a church full of sinners. And sooner or later, you are going to sin against someone, they're going to sin against you. It's a guaranteed thing. If it's never happened to you, you probably never come to church. Okay, I'm pretty sure of that. Christian sin, read the Bible. It's the most honest book in the world. No book writes that many bad things about their people and their leaders. Are you kidding me? They sin against each other. But can you imagine having no clear way of going to show your brother? And sometimes we'll do it awesome, sometimes we won't do it awesome. And that's why I have a job. I don't mind. Go the wrong way, I don't care. Because I get paid by the hour. It doesn't matter to me. You sit down and you listen to people, and here's the funny thing. You have a lot of leaders, a lot of them are volunteers. You don't have time to sit down and have stuff that keeps going wrong, and you're having the same conversation again and again and again, and you're not sure why. And we'll talk about that. And so today, that's why the lesson, our lesson or our workshop, what do you want to call it? We're going to be here for till 9 o'clock with a break in between, and you're online watching. I don't know how many people are online, but it's called the Go Conversation for a reason. And it's something I created as part of the ICOC Peacemakers program that's being taught. So about 1,000 people we've trained to teach this, and hopefully it's a new language we can speak. Once again, it's a tool, not rules. You don't have to do it this way, just like you don't have to go through the studies, but it's really useful. Because I know sometimes we get all funky and fantastic, and we do all the studies, all different orders and stuff, but you got to include some of the stuff. You do, because if you don't, they're not going to get who they're following. I think there are principles that we can teach about the Go Conversation that we can include some of the principles, but if we miss a bunch of them, you're going to have a real problem, for sure. And so, just a little bit about me. This place is Winnipeg. Why do I put that up? Because very few people know where Winnipeg is. And then when I tell them it's 7.5 hours north of Minneapolis, which is in the States, then I get another confused look. Where's Minneapolis? And I'm like, yeah, probably need to pay attention in geography class. But it's right up there where that little arrow points. And where you are is just south of Los Angeles. That's how far we are from you. It's quite a distance. It is a great place. My wife and I were asked to go take care of the church there. And we've been there for 24 years, and people have not tried to kill us yet. So I think we're there. We're excited about that. We live there, and the city's about 800,000 people. The entire province is 1 million. So most people live in Winnipeg. It's a very multicultural city. And I'll tell you, we love the church there, but there are legends that we heard about Winnipeg. It's very cold, and there's lots of mosquitoes. And what we say is that we go from frostbite to mosquito bite. Those are the 2 seasons, okay? And so, yes, because it's at the bottom of a river basin where glacial activity, it's very flat, water doesn't drain, and mosquitoes love standing water, and then they grow there. It's one of the first questions I'm going to ask God. Why did you make mosquitoes? But they feed birds. They could feed birds without feeding on me, right? So they could, but anyway, I digress. There's some bitterness toward mosquitoes. My Go Conversation with them is to slap them till they die. And so that's one way to deal with it. So that's what we are. Also, this is my family. I love them very much. My wife is an incredible sister. She's Korean. That's not why she's awesome, but she's awesome. I'm actually Chinese. No. That's not the same, okay, for some of those. You try that, you're going to get people getting angry with you. No, it's not. It's in the general area, kind of, right? But at the same time, you know, she's amazing. She would have been here with me, but she's actually trying to finish her PhD. It's, you know, that thing that she's doing. She has till May to finish it. So if you just pray, help her to finish it. She just really needs the time. Those 2 other young men beside us, they're our sons. And the one on the far right to you, or left to you, whatever, you know what I mean, the taller one, okay, his name is Xander. He's a disciple. He actually lives in Toronto. He's in the singles, but he's got a girlfriend. He's not going to be single very long, kingdom dating, and so. The other one is also, he lives in South Korea, and so his name is Gabriel. And so they've been disciples 8 and 7 years, great people, we love them very much, and they truly empty nested because they don't take money from us anymore. That's true empty nesting. Not empty nesting with a direct line to my wallet. And so he also started dating, and we realized we started dating in the same time, and I was trying to feel which kidney to sell for their wedding. And so that's what's going to happen for us. But we love them very much, and my wife and I, we've been around for about 30 years in disciple, about 29 years in the ministry. My other bivocational, I do more than one job, is I have some training in mental health, but that evolved more and more to conflict resolution and mediation. So I work in a secular company as well, and I do organizational health, and we do workplace, and really a lot of the material is brought into the kingdom, and it helps us with our organizational health as well. and I get a special view on conflict and mediation. And today, hopefully, some of those things can help you with your daily life. Because this stuff, hopefully, you can use it even tonight. Because I don't like stuff that you got to wait, till it's a blue moon to use. I love stuff that you can use right away. So if you've ever been in an airport, your phone's out of batteries, and you don't have a little battery charger with you, you're not going to go buy one that says you need to go charge it. Because if I can charge it, then why would I do that? I want to buy one that I can use right out of the box. This stuff you can use out of the box. But what I ask you is don't do it in here. Okay? You might go, bro, I just need to talk to you. Not here you're not. It's because I made that mistake before. And they're in the corner and I see you're using half the conversation, aren't you? So you shouldn't be. Wait till you get home. Especially if you're married to the person. Give it a night. Ask me how I know this. Right? Give it a night. Let it settle in. And then have that conversation with your wife. Don't do it because there's this moment at 11:30 at night. Maybe you're fighting with your spouse a little bit. And you have that moment to go, should I address it? Should I just leave it? It should take 15 minutes. 4:30 in the morning, you're still talking, and you're like, I shouldn't have started the conversation, but it's too late. So please don't do that. And also, you need to sign a waiver. I'm not responsible for the damage, okay? So as I move on, as we start thinking about this, many of you have been leaders and just Christians for a while. And if you have not learned how to deal with conflict, your life is pretty miserable. But some of you know how to do it very, very well. And some of you don't do it very well at all. And that's fine, and somewhere's in between. And so why is this important, this situation? Because you want to be able to explain to people why you do it well, or what happens is you can't teach your kids. I'm not very tall. I mean, I seem tall up here. But can you imagine me talking to an amazing basketball? I'll just talk to Michael Jordan. And so how do you become an amazing basketball player? Well, you just take it down the court and dribble a lot, get away from all the people, and just put it in the basket. Okay, well, if it's that simple, I should be able to do it. Except there's a whole lot of things that I'm not considering. That I'm 5'4". I don't have a 12 feet vertical. I'm not talented in that area. I have other talents. So for him to say, hey, David, can you do that? He's not making it very explainable to me. So you have an amazing person that deals with conflict, and they can't explain. Just go in there, bro. Trust God. Be faithful. You should be able to take care of it. Okay. That's like telling your 12-year-old kid, put a CV, a resume together, and go get that job. That's not how it works. There's some steps, right? And I'll tell you, if we don't know the steps, it becomes problematic. So here's a little chart for us to think about. There's different levels of competency, okay? So when you think about the first upper left-hand quadrant, it's something called unconscious incompetence. You know what that means? I'm no good at something and I don't know it. That's really bad. That's the American Idol syndrome. Would you want to go up and embarrass yourself in front of 100 million people? They don't know how bad they are. But who's in the back? You're so good. You're so awesome. Grandma, your pet groomer, somebody who's lying to you, or maybe they believe it, but usually the British guy gets angry and says, who's your voice coach? They should be shot, stuff like that. Because you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know. The other side, you're consciously incompetent. You know what? You know you're no good. That's good. That's fine. And then there's the other side where you're unconsciously competent. You're really good at it, but you don't know. You know what the problem with that is? If you're really good at something, you don't know it, you're not confident. You won't teach it to others. Well, I'm no good at it. But meanwhile, you're awesome at it. What we want people to be is consciously competent. Yeah. I'm good at it, and I know I'm good at it. And then what happens is I can make it explainable. I can teach you how to do it. Unlike Michael Jordan's going to tell me just go score the basket. Really? Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of stuff in between. So if I were to say, hey, how do you deal with conflict? Because you're very effective at it. What if you don't know how to explain it? Well, then it dies with you. So we want to make this material explainable, very clear, then transferable to someone you can coach, your kids, your Bible talk, your life group, even your friends. Because if you think about conflict, it's actually studying the Bible. This is where evangelists get all excited. What do you mean, conflict? Well, most times that you're studying Bible people, they have a conflict with God, don't they? That's the problem. Most likely the conflict with God involves conflict with other people. Right? And sometimes they have a conflict with themselves. It's called sin. So you're actually, when you're studying the Bible, you're actually mediating between them and God, them and others, and even sometimes having that conversation. So some of these principles actually work in Bible study. So that's where the evangelism piece comes in. If you're visiting with us, these principles, whether you use the Bible or not, still work because it's based on research science. So when you start thinking about it, the dangerous thing is that people that are unconsciously incompetent, that means they don't know how bad they are, have the same level of confidence as someone who's consciously competent. You're like, what do you mean? It usually ends up with the last statement, I got this, bro, and then, dearly beloved, gather here to celebrate the life of so-and-so. Like, because they really thought they knew what they were doing when they were parachuting. They really thought, I got this, bro. Meanwhile, they didn't take a course, I watched it on YouTube. Then they die, right? We don't want that. So at the end of the day, what we're looking for is to get us consciously competent of, hey, I'm good at this and I can explain it. And what I'm not good at, I'm not going to try until I practice it out. So some of you are really great at this. Some of you are not. But do you know? But do you know? Because one of the dangerous things about being in a crisis, you don't know you're in a crisis. You don't know you're in trouble. And we're just going to keep going and going and going. Does that make sense? So it's here. Everybody has a space here. So if you know what you're doing, can you explain it? If you don't know what you're doing, can you be made aware of it? Right? And generally the fruit around you will tell you. Bodies, people crying everywhere. You're probably not good at this, okay? If somebody will pay you for it, there's a good chance that they will. During the pandemic time, I've probably done, in the last 2.5 years for our company, I think our business jumped up 400%. I've done almost 380 workshops online. Half of it is conflict resolution. So anywhere between 45 minutes and 6 hours long. And people listen on Zoom. That's how badly, because the pandemic time, it increased that for people. So even when you come back to work at times, you left the person a certain way, and when you come back, they're not the same person anymore. It's the same for church. Well, bro, what happened to you? Well, I'll tell you what happened to me. Years of isolation, this world and fear, it messes things. And conflict is increased crazy. Road rage, anxiety and depression, all that stuff, that causes a lot of conflict sometimes in church. So why is this topic so popular? Because we're experiencing and we need it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So as we go on, I want you to think about this, and this is where I invite you to pull a pen and paper if you want to go old school, or use your phone. I want you to think about a conflict that you'd be willing to analyze and look at. Not something that's going to cause trauma and trigger you, but something that you think about the last time somebody messed up and sinned against you. And so here's the questions I'd like to ask, because we don't want to have examples where they have no reality. But one thing I don't want you to do is throw people under the bus. Don't use their names. Okay, don't use their rank and title. Well, I don't want to use his title, but he's the lead evangelist of the... No. Because in the end, this place is small. You don't want to throw anybody under the bus, meaning that if you want to use an example, have a person that you can use the example, but don't expose them. Because you will get a chance to share a little bit with somebody in your sphere about how you've considered this. So ask the question, who was involved in this conflict with you? Who was involved in sinning against you? Because generally when people sin against you, it causes conflict. Where did it happen? It matters. When conflict and sin happens in church to me, it hurts a lot more than in the parking lot at Wendy's. Because there's expectations that Christians aren't supposed to sin at all, right? Especially ministers. You can't sin as a minister. Like, how can you? You're just, even though every king and every apostle sinned, but not us, right? It's no way. Where did it happen? If it happened in church, sometimes if it happens at the home, it's very different than at work. Also, what was said, specifically what was said. Because there are things in conflict that you can punch someone in the face, but they won't remember it as much as the hard word that you used. Because the healing happens physically, but the emotional scars, you're 6 years old. What was said, what was done, or what was not done by them. And once again, don't judge too quickly here, because you could just be in a situation where you're perceiving this. It doesn't matter if it really happened or not. If you perceive it this way, it's something to think about, because your perception is your reality. They may see it very different. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that. How did it make you feel? Or what was it like for you? Why is that important? Because over time, we don't remember the details of the conflict, but we remember how we felt. And the feelings drive these details. I don't know about you, but sometimes as preacher, you make stories bigger. And this is what I call it the fishing story, where my fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger every time. Like, I don't know, after a while, it's bigger than the boat. But it doesn't matter. Then I get a bigger boat in my story. But we build a story. It's called preacher's latitude. But we have that, and we usually bring the story to the point where it favors us and not the other person. They become a villain, and I'm the hero. Right? I'm the victim of them, and they're the villain. And of course, it gets bigger. But How do the feelings fuel that? And after a while, the story's so messed up that you don't even remember what anything was. Also, how did you respond? How did they respond to maybe you sinning against them or them sinning against you? How did you respond to it? They threw a rock and you threw a rock back. Yeah, but they threw a bigger rock at me. Yeah, but you still threw a rock. Yeah, but my background makes me throw rocks at people. We always have excuses, but how did you respond? And here's the other question that you might think through. What would you or they need to resolve this issue? What would they need? Sometimes you have people say, I don't need anything from you and never want to talk to you again. No, I'm going to really try. If they don't want to talk to you, you become a stalker if you keep following them around. You can't do that. Now, of course, when they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to resolve with you, their conflict is no longer with you anymore. It's with Jesus. Let Jesus take care of it. Romans 12, right? As far as it depends on you, make peace, live at peace with everybody. Let God do all the business. Sometimes we're trying to do God's work, and God's like, be patient with me. There's only so much that we can do. So I'd like you to take a couple minutes, write the little story down. Write the little story down for yourself. Some people are doing it, and well, I've got it in my head already. Write some of these details down so you can see maybe to map it going forward. If you're at home online, invite you to write some of the stuff down. You can use their name because no one's going to see it. Yeah, not in chat. Don't do that. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I don't want to cause conflict in the conflict resolution seminar. Jot down things that will help you remember. You don't have to write down the whole story, but things that help you remember. And if you're not writing this down because you're not comfortable doing that, I invite you to think about it. Think about some of these questions. What are some of the key points that you can remember that have kept you going? Say, if you see this person at a football game, there could be 50,000 people there, but you see where they are. You're like, there they are. That's how you know. People that owe you money, you see them right away. Why do they have that big sandwich? You could, like, what's up with that? Yeah, totally. What do they owe you generally? What do you owe them? Once again, this is to remind you it's not a cathartic story writing. You can do that at home using the same questions. Also, this is a tip for those who are leaders. If somebody wants to talk to you about someone sinning against them, they want to talk to you about a conflict, get them to fill that out before they talk to you. So they can go everywhere. They can keep it focused. It's really helpful for them. Can you write this down and let them process it so that you get focused, they get focused before they come and they spaghetti you, there's spaghetti everywhere. You're like, I can't even find what begins. I don't know if that helps the leaders here to go, oh yeah, even your kids, even people that your neighbor, your friends, this works on everybody. Hey, can you write down some of these things? It helps you to be able to sort it out. Because when everything's important, nothing's important. What's important for them? Because I decide sometimes what's important for them. Let them decide what they want to talk about. And then you can see right away, I'm not going to even start this conversation because I can't help you with that. They have a real estate dispute and they want to do real estate. I'm like, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what to do. But here's a phone number you can call. End of conversation. But sometimes it doesn't stop us from giving advice anyway because we don't know what we're talking about. We'll keep talking because it'll come up probably sometime. How's that going to work? It doesn't work. At least I know what I'm talking about, and what I don't know, I don't know. So once again, that conscious incompetence. I know I'm no good at this, but I know somebody that can. Think about how much time that would have saved you the last time you did this and went, I don't even know what they're talking about, because they don't know what they're talking about. And if they can't put this together, there's a reason why. They haven't sorted their thoughts yet. And so you're going to have this goalpost that keeps moving, but they expect you to meet needs they can't even define. How fun's that? Jay, I want some food. What kind of food? Well, just food. And he keeps coming back with stuff. No, I don't like that. I don't like that. Wouldn't it be easy if I told him what I wanted? Right? Well, this is how it works. So I don't know if that's useful to you already. We haven't even looked at passages yet in the Bible, but there's so many cool things in the Bible you can look at that helps with this. So I'm going to move on. I know it's probably giving you a lot of time to write down stuff, but it gives you an idea of why this is useful for that go conversation. Because you want to know what you're talking about. You want to do that. So when you look through the Bible, right, the theology, the understanding of God and the way he does things should inform Christians of the way they deal with conflict. Worldly conflict resolution looks like this. Point a gun out, stop fighting, or we'll shoot you. Conflict over. It's done. Conflict resolved. Not really, though, because when I take the guns away, you know what happens? They start fighting again. So I had some friends, like back in the day, my household, Asian family, I'm not saying it's all like that. When my dad yelled, conflict was over. Me and my sister and brother would be fighting about something silly, but it seemed earth-shattering to us. My dad would come and blast. So power was the way to deal with conflict. But of course, when he left, oh man, we'd go at it again. I had another friend, though. She had an interesting way her mom dealt with it. And whenever the kids would fight, the mom would bring in a bag of candy. The kids got candy to stop fighting. You know what the kids figured? Two things. One, they liked candy. And after, they manufactured conflicts to get candy. They didn't learn a lot about conflict resolution, but they certainly got a lot of cavities. They did. Maybe a little bit of diabetes with it too. But whatever it is, they learned about. I'm not sure if that was your household. But when we don't have a clear understanding of where we stand on conflict, we will approach it in a way where we like it way too much, or we just don't deal with it properly and we just go quiet. I mean, one of the books I'm going to recommend is called Peacemaking. It's the best place we wanted to be, but it's peace faking and peace breaking. You know what I mean? Peace breaker, and peace faking. Oh, it's all good. It's just an eye. I mean, I lost one. I got another one. That's what we do, and it becomes problematic. Even certain cultures, there's certain things we won't have conflict about. Certain roles and responsibilities we won't have conflict about. Well, that's no good, because in the new approach, being Christian, we got to shape the way we deal with conflict with the theology that matches with God. And so we have a personal mindset and approach to conflict. Thinking about your conflict example, how did you approach it? Don't judge yourself. And then we kind of, I should have done this. Okay, not what you should have done. What did you do? What's your personal mindset? It's that awareness piece. But then you got to ask yourself, does it follow any Bible examples of how to do it? I mean, the healthy examples. There was unhealthy ways in the Bible too. And also different principles to support that approach in practice. Because if you can't find the principle or the example in the Bible, how come you do it that way? Because it's the book of opinions, chapter 4, one of my favorite books. The book of David, chapter 1. Let's turn there. You can't do that. But we do. Because what we do is we gravitate to the family of origin, the way we saw conflict, dad yelling or the bag of candy. And we do it that way, and you'll see it in home. You'll see it in church, everywhere. And so what happens is we do it in a toxic way. We don't build the way God builds. And we're wondering why the house keeps falling down. Because God said so. So if we look at this, these passages, I'm not going to go through every one of them, but they're biblical examples of conflict resolution. And when people sin, this is how they get dealt with. If you look at Exodus 18, verse 13 to 27, everybody knows this passage. Moses and the gang of people left Egypt. They brought a whole lot of people that didn't want to be Egyptian slaves. Do you know not all of them were Israelites? There's a whole lot of people that didn't want to be slaves either. So you had mixed religions, mixed peoples. That's rife for conflict. Yeah. Exodus 18 happens before Exodus 20. You know what significant thing happens in Exodus 20? The 10 Commandments are given. So what happens in Exodus 18 is you have Moses lining up day and night with the people. And what was the issue? He needed to help them see God's will when they had disputes. If somebody says, oh, that's the way to organize Bible talks. No, to organize disputes. But who brought him the idea? Jethro. His father-in-law said, hey, Moses, dude, I'm paraphrasing, of course, this is no good. You're going to tire yourself out because you're the only guy dealing with their conflict. You know what you need to do? Set up leaders, organize them, and set up and deal with the conflicts. Remember who Jethro was? He was his father-in-law. What other title did Jethro hold? He's what? High priest of Midian. Do you think that's just a title like, I wear a Harvard sweatshirt, but I didn't go there? You can't have that title without actively being a high priest of Midian. Do you know what those guys were into? Child sacrifice and all the things God hated. The Midianites would be a pain to the Israelites. So this high priest of Midian, I'm pretty sure he did some things that were against God, came and gave Moses some advice. Isn't that wacky and weird? Do you know that before anything else, before the 10 Commandments were given, this was the first structure that God set up to help them deal with conflict brought in by a non-Christian. So we give David a lot of this stuff from the world. You mean like what Jethro brought in? Jethro never followed Moses to the promised land. You know why? Because he needed to go back to his job as high priest of Midian. You don't just, well, he's high priest emeritus and he doesn't do that anymore. No way. They sacrificed children. They were immoral. They were nasty people. You're the high priest, the head honcho of that. You're doing something that's against God. But yet for some strange reason, God allowed great wisdom to be brought in by a sinful, broken person. Wrong religion, wrong way of doing it. But there was some wisdom from the world. You know, I know many of us are great musicians. How many of us went to the ICOC music school? Oh, none. Okay. A lot of you do mechanics. Anybody go to the ICOC School of Mechanics? No. You bring in non-Christian teaching because it aligns with God's word. When it doesn't align with God's word, then it's wrong. A lot of the music can be pretty sinful, guys. You know this, right? Music can be awesome too. It depends on who's using it. So Jethro brought in conflict resolution principles to organize and not let one person do it. Maybe in your Bible talk, maybe you're the ministry leader, maybe you're the person in the family who has to deal with all conflicts. Wouldn't you want to share the burden a little bit? And if you don't, you got a problem. You're probably codependent. Like, you just want to be needed all the time. You might even create conflict to want to be needed. That's no good. So we start thinking about Jethro set this up. Moses set it up because I think, and this is just my opinion, that if they didn't deal with the conflicts in Exodus 18, they would have never made it to the mountain to get the 10 Commandments. They would have never made it there. They were so bad. Why would you wait day and night to talk to one guy? Day and night you waited for him. Why is that? Because you had a problem you didn't know how to solve. So Moses had to come up with a better way. And I think our understanding is that we got to get good at this, because if we don't, you may never make it to the 10 Commandments if you don't fight. Dealing with people in the world. As we study the Bible with them, a lot of times, a lot of conflict with people. Don't you think some of this might be useful to them? It's very evangelistic. We think about Genesis 18. You know, when you look at this where, you know, they were bartering for Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, can you imagine being, like, okay, God, what about 30? What about 20? What about this? If anybody's been to the Middle East or some parts of the world, in Africa, they have these bazaars, right, where you just yell at people and then they yell at you back. And they goes, oh, 20, well, God, I have a family. How can you do this to me? Whatever. Back and forth. Well, can you imagine watching Abraham argue with God about how many people there should be? You go, oh, that's so disrespectful. Well, apparently to God, he didn't care. Bargaining. That conflict led to some amazing stuff, right? And so it's crazy to think about it. Where even in Genesis 32, you imagine Jacob walking around and God meets him for the first time. And remember what God asked him? Let's fight. Let's wrestle. As a mom, you're like, hey, you two, stop that right now. God's like, hey, you better be quiet. I'm going to smoke you if you don't. I need to do something here. Because Jacob needed to learn some stuff. God fought Jacob. He initiated the fight. Why? Because when conflict is done well, you get a blessing. Well, Genesis 25. Remember the whole soup incident? Right? With Jacob and Esau? That wasn't done well. With some trickiness, you scheme your brother. And even to this day, the descendants of Esau, the Edomites, the modern day people there, are still fighting the Israelites to this day. Well, they didn't do conflict well, and they got a very bad curse because of it. So you see, conflict is not bad. It's the way you do it. Right? You think of Judges 18. That's a horrible story you can't, and that's not a Kingdom Kids story, believe me. It was a situation with a concubine that wasn't getting along with her husband. And that marriage caused a lot of problems, to the point where she was abused and killed, and this Levite just cut up her body parts and sent it to all the Israel without asking a question. They started war, and they figured out, oh no, we almost wiped out a tribe here. We better get women for them. Oh, there's not enough women. Let's go back and forth. What a chaotic mess. And I'll tell you, Judges 18 completely forgot about Exodus 18. Where'd all the conflict resolution principles go? If you read it, Judges 18 will tell you right away, that's a gong show in the Bible. Like, everything is just crazy in there, where you think, how can the Bible not be true? The crazy stuff. Just read it for some light reading before you go to bed. In Judges 18, you're going to go, wow, how did Israel survive? They did conflict very badly, and they forgot what happened in Exodus 18. There were no resolvers. And what's the big theme scripture in Judges? When Israel had no king, people did as they pleased. The good part of that scripture is good people do as they pleased. And bad people did as they pleased. Good people do what God wants. Bad people do what bad wants. And so we start thinking, these are biblical examples, and you can find many, many more of biblical examples of conflict. And our approach to dealing with sin, dealing with our brothers and sisters, dealing with our friends, it's got to be informed by the scriptures. If not, it's informed by you. Sometimes it might be lucky you get it right, but most times you're going to bang into walls and not know why and blame the other person, blame all this. And God says, do it my way. If you don't, I am telling you, bad things are going to happen to you. Yeah, but it's really uncomfortable. The word comfortable is never going to be in this workshop anywhere because it's uncomfortable to deal with conflict. Just like when God wrestled, what happened to Jacob's hip? God snapped. And that's what happens, right? I think Kyle Spears, an awesome brother, he said relationships are a contact sport. It's true. It's true. I don't want to freak anybody out here, but even the act of creating children, from far away, it looks like conflict. You're wrestling each other. You're not, obviously. Maybe you're, but whatever. What it is, that's the way to make life. You wrestle in prayer. Conflict. Conflict is beautiful. The oceans being separated. There's a lot of violence there in a way where a lot of abhorrent. But that's how the world was created. And so when we think about it, if we avoid conflict, we're not really looking what the Bible says. But if we run to it too much, we're not really looking what the Bible says. There's times it's awesome, and there's times that it's not. So if your heart says, well, if my brother sins against me, then I'm just going to go after him with an axe. Or if my brother sins against me, then I'm not going to talk about it because I'm just going to be a doormat. Both those approaches are wrong, and it won't help our church. A lot of times, what we see, these little conflicts are the seeds of very large conflicts. In 2003, it was a huge conflict for us. And when we don't do it well, we lost a lot of people, and the damage is still being felt today. It wasn't just a one-time situation. It's ongoing tooth rot. It's not just pulling it out one time. It's not, and it's still hurting us. No, it's not. It's not hurting us. Yeah, why am I so popular? Doesn't make sense. I'm from Winnipeg. Why am I standing here? It's because you need the conflict teaching across as we do our programs. I'm not important. It's the topic that's necessary. That's what the difference is. Okay? Nobody thinks of garbage people until they don't work. Then everything starts to stink. You're like, wait a minute, I really needed that person. I didn't notice before. So as we move on, this is the passage we're going to focus on. This conflict resolution model is probably one of the number one scriptures that we show each other when somebody sins against you. For those taking pictures, this is in the Bible. I don't know if you know, it's actually in the Bible. It's in there. Okay, it's just letting you know. The other slides may not be, but it's, sorry, I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just in the Bible, yeah. So Matthew 18, verse 15. If your brother sins against you, go, okay, and show him his fault. Just between the two of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. That doesn't mean throw them out of the church. That's not. And it means to love them like you would a pagan or tax collector. But they're not disciples. It means we love them. They don't become enemies. They just become enemies of God. I understand. But when we look at these are words I want to think about. Go. Just like we go make disciples, we don't have steps sometimes. So we go wherever we want. And so what if we unconsciously incompetent? So the way you go matters. So what if I go wrong and I say, well, that brother's just prideful, he's not listening. Yeah, but I came in all wrong with an axe, and they weren't prideful, they were scared. It's a whole different thing. Not being sensitive to culture, experience, not being sensitive to anything. So this therapist, Gottman, said this: the way a conversation starts is usually the way it's going to end. If I start going wrong, what are the chances it's going to go right at the end? It won't. I don't care how we start. If God doesn't intervene, we can repent halfway through, but if we think we're right and we go the wrong way, it's going to be problematic. Because not only do I not see that I'm wrong, then I blame them. Show. What do I show them? I usually show them a narrative that stacks up against me being right, and they're wrong. Even if I'm wrong, it's little, a minute. So I go from denial that I'm wrong to minimization, how wrong I am, to, well, if you weren't like that, then I wouldn't be like that. It's blame shifting. I just don't own it, though. I just don't own it. And so remember this. A rock does not remember as a window. If you're a rock flying through a window, you're not going to remember. A window remembers because it's broken. You're not going to remember the same way if you're the rock. And it's time for us to be able to learn, what do I mean by show this person? And also, I'm trying to win my brother, not crush him. There's a difference. If I go in with the mindset, I'm going to show you our motives, the way our face even looks. You know that face you get? We're like, I want to talk to you, bro. Like, wow, great start. You know what I mean? Try it on your wife, see how that goes. It just doesn't go. And the Bible talks about bringing others. Does it not assume to bring others, if it doesn't work for you, that know more than you? That are a little more experienced, a little more spiritual? Okay, what if I bring in 2 others just like me? And then I say, well, I brought 3 brothers along and he still doesn't listen. Yeah, because you brought 3 of the same guy. 3 of the same guy, right? With some Canadian singer, if you're looking for a knife, all you got is a spoon. I got more spoons for you. And so there's times when we're looking for this amazing plumber and it's an electrical problem. No, bro. I'm going to bring in the best plumber in the city. It's still an electrical problem. I'm going to bring in the world sector plumber. You don't even have a clue, bro. This guy has done so much plumbing in the planet. He's been a plumber for 45 years. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's an electrical problem. You know what? He's going to give it a shot because he's been anointed by God. It's still an electrical problem. And this is what it sounds like when the plumber tries to do it. Zzz, zzz. We're gathered here to celebrate the life of this brother, the most amazing plumber that's ever existed, who tried electrical work because he was unconsciously incompetent and tried to do stuff. There's a science to this. There's a spirituality to this. Not for everything. But if it's been happening again and again, you're having the same 3 conversations, you're having the wrong conversations, we need to bring in people that know what they're talking about. They don't have to be professionals. Just look around for people that are effective with them. Hey, can you help me? Because I'm not effective. I don't care what t-shirt I wear. Sometimes I can be so awesome, but they just don't trust me. So I got a lot of skills, but they don't trust me. Let me tell you, all my degrees and all the things, when I'm fighting with my wife, she doesn't care. Don't analyze me. But I can, though. I don't do it. You conflict stuff of like, what? Oh, what? I make money doing this. I don't care. It doesn't work with me. You're wrong. Well, you're wrong. You see? Now I'm 5 years old again. So, Christian, do we not know way more than we do? Who here doesn't know how debt works? Right? Don't spend more than you have. I don't need an MBA for that. We don't do it, though. You know why? My emotions get in the way. The iPhone 14's out. I need it, right? I know that. I know I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it feels good. It feels good. So when we bring others along, are they going to bring in the same emotional energy? So when I say something, I want it to land a certain way, the words and the intention. If someone can't do that for me, I'm bringing the wrong people in. You ever have that happen? I don't care how awesome of a plumber they are. I need an electrician. I need an electrician. The most basic electrician can handle something that the most complicated plumber can't. Conflict is something like that, where you may have some things that you have experience in you can help with. Does that make sense? So look at this passage. We're going to unpack this a little bit. How do you go to others for conflict resolution? Think about the way you approach that conflict example. How did you approach it? What did you do? I want you to turn to the person beside you, if you don't mind, and in one sentence or 2, say this. What was something that you did great? And what was something you didn't do great? Without telling the whole conflict, you don't need to do that. In my conflict, I went in and yelled at them. Yeah, that wasn't awesome. Or something I really did great, I only yelled at them a little bit and then I stopped, took whatever it was. Think about the conflict. What do you see now? What did you do? And it's a checking awareness. So turn to the person beside you and say, hey, if you don't have someone beside you, go find a friend and say, hey, in my conflict example, don't give them tons of context. What did you do well and what could you have done better? If you have 3, talk to 3. It's okay. It's not a sin. If you're at home, talk to someone, chat online. Remember, no names. No names. I made this mistake before. What did you do good? What could you have done better? Some of this is the essence of what went wrong. What could I have done differently? What did I do well? Give you another minute to do that. Give you another minute to do that. So, thank you, partners. High five, or whatever you do here, whatever's COVID permitting. See, thank you so much for listening to me. I don't know how it felt for you to be able to kind of encapsulate, because we give a lot of details, but sometimes it gets down to, you know what, I did this well, and I didn't do this well. And it's just as simple as that to walk through. Now, I'm not talking about multilateral conflicts, between Russia and Ukraine. I'm not talking about that. Most stuff aren't that level at your house, I think. Right? You might need some serious support. But average things involve stuff like, how come we waited so long in the line at Costco? We could have went to, Walmart and get that. Well, I like Costco. I like the hot dogs there. It could be something as simple as that. The stuff that I get talked to about, I can't believe people are paying me money for this. The thing about it is, it doesn't matter because it's not about the cutlery. It's about your relationship. That's what it is. You can fight about stuff. In the end, you're going to fight about the silliest things is because you're mad at the person. It has nothing to do with scallops or chicken. It doesn't matter. Because you know this, if somebody says, honey, can you pass the salt? I'll pass the salt. You have some strong convictions about salt. I don't think so. You know something's wrong. And so as we start thinking about this, question where is practice makes what? Practice makes perfect. That's what we say, okay? But what happens is, if you do it wrong, practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent if you do it wrong. See, proper practice makes perfect. So what if I work harder? What if I don't know what I'm doing? Remember? The plumber, electric, I'm going to just keep going for it. Listen, you're going to electrocute yourself, bro. I know you need to see Jesus, but not just right away, right? So at the same time, can you imagine in heaven, what are you doing, man? Your license says plumber. What were you doing? Right? You get out a whole life. But I try warning you with the little zaps, but after a while, I'm not going to violate physics just for you, right? So at the end of the day, practice makes permanent. Well, bro, it's been working for me. But can you explain how it works? So many of us, we practice and practice and practice. Effort does not mean productivity. So as strong as Steve is, he can push against that wall. The building's not going to move, and there's something I don't know about him. Pushing, he's going to sweat, his muscles are going to hurt, it's going to be great. The only thing he's going to get is sore back. The building won't move if we're looking to move the building. There are times we'll try and try and try without realizing that it's okay to recognize that effort, hard work, but the wrong tool, you'll never get it done. Do you know that most household tools are broken because they're used for the wrong purpose? How many butter knives have little dents in it because you try to use it as a screwdriver? Not meant for a screwdriver. Would you use a screwdriver to cut a steak? You wouldn't, would you? Well, why would you do that? Well, I'm just too lazy to go get one. Well, then have fun with all the broken knives. For us as disciples, we have learned a way And oftentimes, you know what, bro? You gotta go pray about it more. What if you're doing the wrong thing? I don't care how much you pray about it. I'm gonna pray about this brother who's a plumber to do electrical work. God says, I'm gonna give you that miracle. Go to school for that. Why would I do that for you? That doesn't make any sense. That's a silly prayer. And as we think about this, the Go conversation has steps to it. And once again, this is a tool, not a rule. It's got 4 steps. It's called plan and name the issue. Be curious and listen. Share your opinion, and you repeat 1 to 3 till you figure out what the issue is, then you resolve it. It's just as simple as that, but very difficult when you start breaking it down. Let me tell you where my favorite is. I want to start at number 3. Yeah, share my opinion. What's the issue? Doesn't matter. I'm going to share my opinion. I got 10 pieces to a 100-piece puzzle. I'm going to tell you it's a wombat. For sure it's a wombat. Meanwhile, well, you only got the corner piece. You don't know what it looks like. I just know, because I've been around a long time. Let me explain this to myself. I don't care how long I've been around. I'm still not a mind reader. I don't care how I've been around. How am I going to know the situation? Now, it may be similar to situations, but the idea for me is I love going to number 3. Don't you? I want to ask a bunch of questions, just waste time. Since I already know what's going on, we do it with our kids. And there's a point in time they go, you know what, what's the point of talking to mom? She won't even listen. And then that comes up in counseling later on. Thanks for it, by the way. We don't mind. Kingdom Kids loved it, and also the teen ministry too. Right? Yeah, my mom, she doesn't listen to me. Oh, okay. How do we talk to your mom about it? Oh, it won't matter. She won't listen. Let me tell you, this stuff shows up in home. It's serious now. It shows up in church. This kind of stuff, when it's done wrong, is the poison in our home. Hypocrisy. And so we start thinking about, even my own life, my kids, man, when our kids lied, we asked 2 questions. 1, why did you lie? And secondly, what conditions did we create in the home for you to lie? That's important to know. I want to make sure it's not us, because if it is, we need to do some stuff. But that only will happen with 1 and 2 instead of jumping to 3. I think when they're 1 year old, you can go for the 3, because they don't know what they're doing. They're going to kill themselves if they go their own way. You know what I mean? They will. I want to eat this Tide Pod. No. There's no listening, no validating of your feelings. It's not going to happen. When they start getting older and they do have these things, practicing. Because what's cute at 5 is not cute at 15. It's just not. Okay? But some things, they're sinful at 5. Will still be sinful at 15. There's no magic Kingdom Kids solution for this. There isn't. So when I practice and show sharing my opinion first, they will also do the same thing. And then I'll power over them. You need to listen to me. You mean like you listen to me? A sermon is caught more than taught, as you probably know, right? They catch what I do more than what I say. I learned to smoke because my dad was telling me while he was smoking not to smoke. I was like, oh yeah? How's that working for you? You look pretty cool doing it, right? And as we think about this, sharing my opinion first is my number 1 choice. Think about your situation. Did you know what was going on before you start sharing? Did you know what was really going on? And so when we don't, that's probably the conversation issue right there. So plan and name the issue. When you think of Proverbs, planning. Who thinks about planning a conversation when someone sins against you? It's especially then, because you're emotional. You just got kicked. And so you've got to be able to make a plan, especially if this person's got historical conflict with you, somebody that's a key relationship, somebody where they can fire you. It's important, okay? Well, the Bible says the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. I want to win profit in this argument. I want our relationship to pay dividends, not cost me taxes. When somebody doesn't trust you, you pay heavy taxes. You do. Hey, Jay, can you do this? Yeah, what do you mean by that? You see, taxes. It takes forever. When you trust someone, a handshake can take care of it. You don't trust someone, stacks and stacks and stacks of paperwork. Warren Buffett made hundreds of millions of dollars of deals shaking people's hands because he trusted them. But for much smaller deals, he's written a lot of paperwork because he doesn't trust, because he doesn't know who you are. But at the end of the day, if I don't plan, I'm going to go to poverty in all my relationships. So what does planning look like? Thinking about the situation. Asking questions I call the reporter questions. Who? Why? When? Where? How? What? Are the questions that you started answering in the beginning. Because if we don't plan it out, we're going to get surprised by the information that we miss. Because when I'm emotional, I don't, bless you, when I get emotional, I don't ask the right questions. I don't ask for the big picture. I only focus on the picture that's important for me. And so why is this important for me? Because if I am talking about the wrong stuff, I'm trying to solve the wrong issue, that doesn't even really solve it. One Stanford professor said this: if I had an hour to solve a problem that my life depended on, it's a pretty big problem, I would spend 45 minutes defining the problem. Defining the problem. Have you ever raced in to try to solve a problem and it's the wrong problem? Oh, is that what you're talking about? Man, I should have listened first, huh? Right? I shoot first, interview later. That's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. Right? For me, planning involves making sure I know the answers to these questions. And if I don't know the answers, those are the first questions I'm going to ask. Hey, are you upset, or is it your wife? Do you know how many conflicts I've been in where the brother is sat down and the brother agrees and he goes home. The next day he doesn't agree again. We're like, huh, what's the problem here? And after a while you realize it's the wives that are mad at each other and not even the brothers. Well, they get the wrong people in the room. Well, you go back and tell him this. And they go like, yeah, and I believe that, and like, are you reading that? Like, what are you doing? It's not their convictions. And we've had that many times. It's the sisters that are mad at each other, or sometimes it's the brothers and they're fighting through their kids. Something's wrong. And we don't ask these questions. We're trying to plan. We don't plan, well, we're going to come to poverty and waste all this time, energy, and money. And many people who are volunteers get burned out because they're like, we're never going to get to the end of this. Wouldn't you rather just identify it very quickly? And if you can't identify it, then you got to kind of go in and ask questions and maybe get lots of advice and say, okay, what if you hear again and again that they've asked 5 other people the same thing? Then it's not about you, is it? It's a pattern that you see in other people. Instead of saying, well, it's just about me and getting all insecure. And when you see the pattern, it gets pretty powerful. So thinking about planning, well, what would you do differently? Thinking about your conflict. Write a few things down. What questions were missed in your initial thinking about how you dealt with that when somebody sins against you? When you remember the initial conversation you wrote about? What's something that you would like to know? You know what? I think I missed the big how question. So maybe even check off, like write a few words down. I need to go and explore the how. I need to explore the what in this question. Because if I don't think about it, I'm going to feel about it, and my feelings drag me everywhere. You think about salespeople. I'm not nailing salespeople, but they sell to your heart, not to your mind. And I'll tell you what I mean. When something costs $599, what I say, oh, that's $500. That's my heart says. My mind says, wait, that's $1 from 600, right? What does this really cool looking thing have to do with a washing machine? It doesn't, because you sell to the heart, right? Salespeople, hey bro, hey Steve, man, you look like a really awesome guy. Listen, I don't do this for everybody, but I like you. I'm gonna give you 30%. Bro, I could lose my job if I tell this. But if you buy this from me in the next 10 minutes, you know what, I'm gonna give you 15 because you're a good guy. But once you leave this table, I don't wanna risk my job. I got a family. But if you get up from this table, I won't be able to do it for you. But hey, listen, I'm not just saying this, but I really do like you. You're a Christian, minister, got you, okay? So listen, don't tell anybody, all right? I bet you say that to all the girls, and they do. I know. What's he trying to sell? He's not selling to Steve's mind. He's selling to Steve's heart. And we know this. Advertising will tell you how this works. I will follow my heart before I follow my mind, and we know this. We don't plan, we will follow our emotions. I'm not saying it's wrong to follow your emotions, but it can't be the only thing, right? All right? When you think Esau, when he sold it for a bowl of soup, you think he was thinking real hard? Not at all. He was using, oh, I'm hungry, right? And so I like to say this, you never make decisions when you're in a halt situation. H-A-L-T. Anybody heard of this before? Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Don't make decisions. Because you know what you do with prisoners of war? You make them hungry. You make them angry. You make them lonely. You make them tired. Then you get info out of them. Why would I do that to myself? Right? Why would I do that to myself? And I'm not going to be my best self, right? And so planning involves, okay, I'm not going to do it this time. You know why? Because it's 2 in the, remember the 11 o'clock? I think I'm going to address it. It'll take 15 minutes. No, man, that's a fail. Like, it's wrong. Next thing, even naming the issue. I want you to think about this passage. When they heard this, okay, this is talking about this riot in Ephesus, okay? And they're fighting about Artemis and silver and all that kind of stuff, but they made it a religious argument. And listen to what this says. Read the story, it's amazing. When they heard this, the crowd, okay, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" So they're really excited, very fired up. But listen to this. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people did not even know why they were there, but they were really loud. If you read the story, it's hilarious. Yeah. Not so much for the apostles that were involved and they got beaten for it. But the idea is that when you're not specific with an example and clear about what the issue is, what are you talking about? Right. What are you talking about? So if you go in talking about everything, you're going to end up talking about everything, and it gives the person a way out to dodge and do Bible gymnastics around it. Versus, hey, Jay, you know, bro, can I ask you something? You made a comment the other day, and I wanted to get some clarification about that. It was about my shoes, and I'm just wondering, can we talk about that a little? As opposed to, hey, you know, I didn't appreciate the way you disrespected me about my shoes. Like, one is like, and the other one is, I am curious about it. It takes a little bit of planning, because, wow, how do you do that? Because I planned statements like that out to make sure that he's not feeling judged, and it could be totally something very different than what I think. So, thinking about this, about your example, what specific thing did they do with an example? Remember, you're trying to go to them for a conflict resolution situation because they sinned against you. What specific thing? Well, they were disrespectful. What do you mean by that? Well, they were, disrespectful. You know what disrespectful is? No, I don't. I don't know what that means. What does that mean for you? And I use this on my workshops a lot. Can someone explain this statement to me? For those who know it, because you've watched me online, don't answer, please. The chicken is ready to eat. What's that mean? I know you don't trust me anymore. You go, what's up the sleeve here? The chicken's ready to eat. What does that mean? Hello? Like what? We're still here? Yeah. The chicken's ready to eat. What does it mean?
The chicken's dinner is ready. He's got his food right there, and he's ready to eat the dinner.
Who's ready to eat the dinner? So the chicken is ready to eat the dinner. What's another meaning of that? The chicken is cooked, ready for me. One's good for the chicken. One's not so good for the chicken. You might go, I never thought of that way before. When I do these workshops in rural communities, most people think, well, okay, I used to do chores and I used to feed the chickens. A lot of people in the cities that never good. Why would you feed a chicken? Comes in a little package, in a drumstick. Like, what are you talking about? Because it's your context, right? Not a workshop where somebody says, I had a friend, his nickname was Chicken. And so I was like, what? Because, I thought he was hungry. And I had this really strange guy in the back raise his hand, can I share something? I'm like, yeah, what? Well, it could also mean you guys are ready to eat your friend. And we're like, he's not married for sure, right? Like, there's something up with him. So it went from confusion about what's ready to eat to cannibalism. And that's how far it went. So the simple statement is the chicken is ready to eat. What if it's something more complicated? I need you to be more professional at work. I need you to be more humble. What does that mean? What does that mean? No example. I am humble. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. And that's how it looks. That's what it looks like. Okay, bro, what do you mean by her not being humble? Well, she doesn't agree with me. Oh, so to be humble is to agree with you. Can you just say that 5 times fast and let me know what that means? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is kind of silly. Oh, okay. Well, that's not what I mean then. Then what do you mean? You've been fighting about it for 2 days. You don't even know what you're talking about? Yeah. Go away, figure it out, and when you come back, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? If you can't define it, it becomes a chicken that's ready to eat, and nobody knows what they're talking about. I don't mind. Once again, I don't care. I sit with you, charge you money to ask what's going on, sit with you, charge you money what's going on, and sit you together and charge you money again, and you figure it out. Oh, it was a major misunderstanding. But why are we paying you? Because you couldn't figure it out. That's why. I do believe stupidity should cost money. It should. That's what, for me, if I don't know what I'm doing, it's going to cost me money. Well, if we learn how to do it, we don't have to do this. We don't have to waste time. Most people who deal with conflict, you're like, is that what you're fighting about? That's not the issue. They don't know how. And so what if we asked, if you're specific with the example, if you're specific of what it's about, can you be clear of what you're really addressing? When you say that brother is being a jerk, in the Greek, what's that in the Bible? There is no word jerk, like jerkus, like it's not in there. Being a jerk, sometimes it means you're selfish or you take the last piece of chicken or whatever that means. If you're specific with an example, then they can address it with you. You might think, wow, this takes a long time to even address the issue. Because if you're targeting the wrong problem, you're going to have this conversation. It's a nothing burger conversation. There's nothing in it. You get nothing out of it. And it is the number one thing in conflict resolution. What are you fighting about? What's the sin? What's the sin? Well, they're just being arrogant. Chicken's ready to eat. What do you mean by arrogant? Well, prideful. You're saying the same thing. You're using the thesaurus and give me all the words. Give me an example of arrogance. Well, they think they're better than me. What are they referring to? Well, Jay thinks he's better than me at playing the piano. Since I don't read music, nor do I play the piano, what's my problem? He is better than me at playing the piano. So are we really talking about the piano? No, we're not. We're talking about maybe Jay's attitude about, well, I play the piano, you suck. Like, that's not the piano, is it? It's his attitude toward the non-piano players. You see? So we're arguing about Jay's piano skills. We're not really arguing about Jay's piano skills. We're talking about Jay's attitude toward me because I can't play piano. You see, there's a different argument there, right? Yeah. I've seen people go on and on about Jay. Well, if I had your privilege and background, I'd learn piano too. Now we're talking about social economics and development and privilege. How did it get from there? Like, how did it do that, right? It gets there. Once again, I make money doing this. I don't care. Oh, do you want to take it down that road? Sure. Let's go. Let's bring in graphs. Let's do this. Versus in church, it's so destructive because you get conflict fatigue and you get tired and you find you just throw it on the top. Forget, I'm done. I'm out of here. We don't want that. Are we going to do this all right the first time? No, we're not. But I'll tell you, though, it's an amazing place to start. So plan it out and name the issue. So right before our break, I want you to think about your situation. What is the issue? So make sure it's connected before you start talking. Okay? I don't know if you noticed, the little plug is not connected to the tongue, to the brain, and we just spew and spew. So I'll leave you with this quote as we go on a 10-minute break, okay? Kids tell you everything they know, and then they shut up. Just figure that out. Adults will keep talking. They come to the end of their knowledge, and they keep talking. Kids will tell you all they know, and then they stop talking. And then they learn to be adults, and they never do. For us, it's okay to be humble here. So you know what? I didn't plan that very well. I can see why it's a disaster. Yes, they were being prideful. Okay, what do you mean by prideful? Okay, wait, I got to redefine it. Do you see how much thinking's involved? Jesus didn't ish it with people, like 5-ish or you sin-ish. He nailed it. Hey, go sell everything you have and come follow me. Whoa, that's pretty right in the middle. Very specific, right? We would have argued up and down with this person who's studying the Bible. We're not really getting to the heart of the issue. We're not getting to the heart of the issue. It really helps during Bible studies to get them to repent of something that's substantive. Because how do you measure repentance if you don't even know what they're repenting of? They're repenting of being a jerk. Good luck defining that, right? But selfishness, there's clear things about that. So over your break time, take a 10-minute break. We'll call you back. Think about this stuff. Okay, let's get back to our seats. Let's get back to our seats, and then we'll continue. For those who are online, great to have you here again with us. Ooh, I think there's a little bit of feedback. Great. So, as we continue with this, it's so simple to go and just not have any direction, not have any focus, and it goes all over the place. And then after a while, you don't even know why you're originally talking. You don't even know why. And then it becomes a secondary and tertiary issue. Well, I didn't like the way you talked to me. So the original issue is no longer solved. Because you're talking about the way you treated me. Oh, I don't like the way you treated me when you treated me that way. It's like, after a while, it's ridiculous, right? And so naming the issue becomes a problem. So here's a question for you. Do you ever have a situation, okay, where, I don't know, I'll use maybe, we'll use a couple here. Maybe, you're Steve and Charlie, right? Like the two of them together? Okay, let's say you get home, okay? Yeah. And Charlie's like, did you get dinner? He goes, what? And it goes, well, I texted you. And then Steve goes on, why didn't you get the text? Well, why didn't you get the text? You never check your messages. Well, if you would let me get a better phone, right? So, well, we can't afford stuff because of this and this and this, going on and on and on. What happened? What just happened? He could have called. Yeah, maybe. What's the issue? He didn't get the chicken. She's hungry. That's right. So now we're talking about global data network plans and monopoly and Rogers and AT&T, they're two biggest conglomerates. Why the cheapness in the family, why I can't use this phone. Like, what are we doing? And then you're getting hungrier and angrier, hangrier, and never gets wild. So the HALT, because we're right away, I didn't get the text. Why didn't you get the text? And you jump off as if, okay, whoa. I didn't get the text, but I'm going to get dinner right away. Then you can have a conversation while you're eating that delicious chicken. Most likely, she may come in, you know what, I was a little hard on you, I'm sorry. Yeah, I probably should have checked my text. Yeah, I probably need to get that phone thing fixed while you're eating. Because the issue is dinner, not the text plan, not him being incompetent, not her being cheap. Like I don't think anybody's done that. I'm just saying in Winnipeg, we do this a lot. Okay, never. Right? I remember one guy says, I hate the ICOC. And I'm like, ooh, that's pretty prickly since I work for it. And so I said, bro, wow, it sounds like you're really impacted. I shared the story, it's pretty hilarious. Not so much for him, but for me. I hate the ICOC. What is the ICOC? What do you mean, is this a specific person you hate? Is there a grand poobah? Like, what are you talking about? Say, wow, bro, sounds like the ICOC is not really working for you. Can you tell me what that means? Well, the single sisters, they never text you back. Wow, all of them never text you back? Well, no, this one specific sister. Okay, well, what do you mean by? Well, I asked her to be my girlfriend through text, and she didn't respond and said she didn't want to. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not, okay, are you saying you hate the entire ICOC and all the single sisters to blame, but specifically it was a single sister that you texted to be your girlfriend that doesn't like you, and now you hate the whole movement? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that does seem kind of silly, doesn't it? A little bit. What if you don't ask the question? Well, we're working on things, there's systemic issues with ICOC, racial. Is that what we're talking about? The guy has a problem with a sister that doesn't like him. That's the problem. The sister doesn't like you. That's why she said no, bro. You might want to ask a question before you text her. Look, I know we're all new and stuff, but we still want to do the old-fashioned way, face-to-face a little bit, right? A little bit, right? So can I help you with something? Find the sister, see if she likes you. That's good recon. A lot of good information. Because you get bigger yes answer. Okay, so I didn't bother addressing that he hates the ICOC. I don't really think he hates the ICOC. He started hating himself for being such a silly person. Listen, buddy, do you want to date effectively? Because you might want to just talk to the person. So his issue was much more personal. Yeah. But how many of us would have reacted that way? So we're missing the issue. So the next point is being curious and listening. And we know this. Because if you're not sure of what the issue is, it might morph as they share information. Because you think it's something, but it's not. Right? How many times have I put my foot in my mouth only to take it out, to put my other foot in? Right? Because we just keep talking and it doesn't make sense. So being curious looks like this. He or she, there's a lot of she's here too. He who answers before listening, this is his folly and his shame. Do you know in a shame and honor culture in Israel, to call someone a fool and to bring shame upon them, those are fighting words. Yeah. In that culture, it was normal to die to restore the honor of your people. So when you call someone that, do you know what the Proverbs were saying? It was shameful. It was folly to answer before listening. I don't think we see it that way in the world. Well, whatever, my bad. Like, no, because it can start wars. It can start wars. Things out of context, right? You know, when you see you see a review in the movie, okay? You see ... the best movie of the year. You're like, oh, wow, you go see it. I want to see the interview in context. What if it said, definitely not the best movie of the year, but I put 3 dots? Or that's not accurate. You know what I mean? You can't report like that. But apparently we can. And so we're not curious enough to ask the questions. And so how do we be curious? These are good questions that I often share with people that I use myself. What if somebody does something you don't understand, something that's especially irritating to you? Instead of reacting badly, I'll say, hey, I'm curious about blank. Can you help me understand? I suppose, why'd you do that, man? Like, you see that prickliness? We don't want that. I'm curious. Can you help me understand? Most people don't react badly to that. Hey, I've noticed, so I noticed something. I noticed that we're supposed to meet, in my understanding, we're supposed to meet at 9 o'clock. I notice it's 9:30 now. Can you tell me what's going on? Hey, Dave, you know your watch stopped? Oh, whoops. I'm glad I didn't go into that all crazy, right? Or did you not get my text? I had to help my grandmother, and you shouldn't have helped your grandmother. You should have showed up. You know, like, that's a whole different problem. Hey, I need your help. Can you explain to me? These are very neutral statements, very curious statements. Or, hey, can I get your perspective before I share mine? And all three discussions I've had with the staff and the leaders and the squad and all the different people, the cultural diversity team, whatever the moniker here is, in our earlier Bible Talk Leader Workshop, this was showed about being curious, because it's a key. Because how can I know what's going on and what to address if I'm not curious? Curiosity has got to be our saving grace. And I'll tell you what I mean. How many here know what you're supposed to do when you're on fire? First of all, you're probably doing it wrong if you're on fire. But if you're on fire, what are you supposed to do?
Stop, drop, and roll.
That's right. Stop, drop, and roll. You probably learned at school for maybe your first woodworking class or your first science class, because that's when the Bunsen burners are. There's a lot higher chance you're burning yourself to death. You probably wouldn't learn it in math class. I don't know what you're doing in math class, but no way. But why stop, drop, and roll? Because the science behind it is you should stop locomotion. And when you're on fire, you shouldn't spread like curtains and people and puppies on fire. If you move around, like, ah! So stop. Well, dropping on the ground, because the next maneuver is smothering the oxygen out, right? Less oxygen, less material to burn, and you're okay. Do you think you would remember all the science behind that when you're in fire? You're not. You're really emotional when you're in fire. But what can pass through, what we call this amygdala hijack, okay? The amygdala is very important because it helps you with your fight, flight, freeze response. You see a bear, you should run, you should fight, you should react instead of, this is the bear. No, that's how you get eaten. But for us, when somebody does something that's prickly or scary, instead of freaking out, what if stop, drop, and roll for us in conflict resolution, dealing with sin is, I'm going to be curious. Instead of stop, drop, and roll, I'm going to be curious. Because what stop, drop, and roll, it penetrates past our emotions. You might think, well, when did this happen? Well, I'll tell you, I had a friend who's a cop for 17, 18 years. First couple weeks on the job, he was with his staff sergeant. They were sitting outside a 7-Eleven, just doing their thing. Cruiser and everything. And for some strange reason, these two robbers parked in front of the 7-Eleven and ran in to rob the store with the... I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on. You know what this person did? New person reached for his phone to call 911 as a cop. The sergeant's like, what are you doing, man? He goes, oh, because it happens. Because his immediate reaction is call 911. Can you imagine the dispatch? Yeah, you're the closest unit. Actually, you're the actual unit that's there. Can you imagine? That would be pretty silly, right? Because it's instinctual to call 911. You know, after 17, 18 years of cop, he's not a cop anymore. You know what he always does when he gets nervous? He does this. What's he reaching for? His gun, his sidearm, because he's right-armed, right? Now he's like, whoa, he just, what are you doing? He's just, I'm not doing anything. So as a friend, I gave him a flashlight, a little tiny flashlight, so he can put it there. It's a tactical flashlight, force multiplier, whatever his kid. Puts it there so he can reach for that while he's just looking at my flashlight, because I want to see you better, like whatever. Because it looks silly. Just, that's what he did. Well, can you imagine you doing this? Instead of reaching for your gun, you reach for curiosity. I'm going to pull out a question for you. It can be curious for you. Very practical. You can use it right away. Because somewhere along the line, someone's going to do something, even today, is going to do, you like, if people are poking, yeah, stop poking each other. I can see you. Okay, so I know. Like, yeah, right? Like, don't do that. For us, we start thinking about curiosity. Think about how different that conflict situation of yours would have been if you were curious. Are you sure you know what happened? Are you sure? Because think about us. I judge others by their impact. I don't care about their intent. Well, I judge their impact and their intent. Because if the impact's bad on me, you have bad intent. Okay? But if I impact someone badly, I defend myself with my intent. I didn't mean to. Yeah, but if I didn't mean to hit you with my car, you're still going to the hospital, right? Can you imagine standing there saying, I didn't mean to. Yeah, hi, thank you. I don't think you meant to, but I still have a broken femur. We judge others by their impact. I don't care about their intent. I judge myself by my intent, ignoring impact. I got to be curious about both intent and impact. I got to be curious about this. Because if I'm not, it's going to be problematic.
When I'm curious, when I ask these questions, I really got to listen. So what does listening mean? Whoops, I went too fast. Listening means I'm going to hear till I understand their point of view. This is what I say, understanding their point of view. Get to the point that I believe they're sincere. They may be honest, but not accurate. You see the difference between the two? They're honest and sincere, but they're not accurate. They're not lying. That's the way they see the world. So I believe that you believe it, brother. But can I share my point of view to correct some of that narrative? Because think about this, all right? If somebody was at the edge of a cliff, okay? And I'll be Jay, can I borrow you for a second? Let's pretend you just stand there at the edge of a cliff, all right? And he's like, you're just kind of holding on like a little bit like edge of the cliff. You're just, yeah, like this, okay? So here I am, I'm running at him because I look like he's going to fall. And I do this, and he decides he's going to fall off. What does that look like? I pushed him off, or I was trying to save him. You can't tell, right? Even a video can't tell. Only he knows, and only I know. Yeah, he's dead, so only one witness. Thank you, bro. Appreciate that. Jay, really great job. When you're helping someone or pushing them, it can look the same. But you won't know unless you're curious and say, hey, what were you trying to do? Well, I was trying to help him, but I tripped and I pushed him off by accident. I mean, I may go to jail for manslaughter, but not for first degree. Now, if I lured him there with candy or whatever it is, and then I shove him off, like, yeah, that's a little premeditated, okay? And I grease the edge, and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a problem. So can you look at all these illustrations? I like using pictures so you can remember. It looks the same. Rescuing and attacking, it can look very much the same. Curiosity is what is going to help us reach for it, especially when you come to cultural narratives. Because in some countries, this means no, and this means yes. Can you imagine? Do you understand? But I thought you understood. What are you doing? What if they thought they know that I know? And so now are you doing it the Western way or the other way? Yeah, okay, stop. No, not, okay. Yes or no, right? Being curious helps us with that. I know in different places when I wasn't curious, it was really important because you can break a lot of narratives and hurt a lot of people, and then they get mad at you because they're all they're going to remember, oh, you ignorant person from North America, you always disrespect us. No, that wasn't my plan in the morning. I was just stupid. I didn't know any different. I don't know if you remember one time when George Bush, sorry, it's so funny, I had to laugh. This is the OK symbol for North America. It means something else in other parts of the world. You can look it up yourself, okay? So he went to this country and he did this to all the leaders in the military. Okay, right? And everyone's like, and he goes, oh, maybe they didn't get the message, and he did it again, right? It's something very rude, and it involves an anatomy. And that's what he just called all of them, and he's like, but I just meant okay. He goes, no, you did not. You insulted an entire country in the military. But he didn't know, right? He probably should have gotten coached. Like, hey, dude, I see you do this a lot. Don't do it. It's an international incident, okay? Be curious. So, being curious and listening, only then, after this point, guess what happens? Then I get to share because I know what I'm going to talk about. Because beforehand, if I want to go to number one, look at how much we missed. Wasn't curious, don't know what the issue is. I'm just talking and talking and talking. And after a while, they're going to, you don't even listen. I am listening. I can repeat everything you said. That's not listening. Parrots can do that, but they don't understand you, right? If you ask a parrot, I love you so much, I'm going to eat you in the kitchen. They're like, yeah, I'm going to eat you in the kitchen. They don't know what you're talking about because there's no meaning, though they can repeat it. Does that make sense? So we think about sharing my opinions. It makes sense to share my opinions. It says, Proverbs 15, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of a fool gushes folly. So when I'm sharing my opinions, there are some rules, okay? I'm going to talk about this in my message tomorrow. But you can't sin when you're sharing that opinion, or they're only going to focus on the sin. Your message is lost through the messenger. And when I go talk to a brother or sister, if I'm not checking myself, and even when I'm being like Jesus, they'll criticize me. Because Jesus was being like Jesus and he was criticized. I'm not Jesus at all. I've got history with these folks. And so part of it, looking at it, is when I share my opinion, oftentimes I want to be able to lay out a bunch of facts, fact to prove my case. But there are a lot of times that the facts aren't so clear anymore, but what's very clear are the feelings. And so I like to use this tool that I learned from one of my mentors many years ago. It's called the 4 Fs. It's feelings first, facts follow. What do I mean by that? I look at how they're feeling, I name it, and then I talk about some facts. I may say, hey, bro, I know this is going to be really hard to hear this. Or, hey, I know I'm not the best example of a righteous man, and I know you can have some feelings, but, I really do love you, and I wanted to let you know that what you said was really bigoted. I want to do, but you see how different that sounds? Because I deal with the feelings. I address the relational side first. So we call that connection before correction. Feelings first, facts follow. I want to make sure. I don't know how many of you subscribe to the Vision conference. Some of you have that password. I did a lesson in the ILC. It's called Dealing with Difficult Conversations the Way Jesus Did. It was some crazy title they gave me. So Dealing with Conversations the Way Jesus Did. And we talk a lot about emotional connection, making sure we do the feelings part. Because we lay out a bunch of facts. It's dry and cold. Even as simple as this, feelings first, facts follow, sounds something like this. What if you're running late? What sounds better if you're running late? Hey, do you have a watch? Right? Does that sound cool? I mean, it's a fact. You're late. Hey, I'm not sure, but you're always a half an hour late in your culture? Like, that's really insulting. You're dealing with a bunch of facts. Even if they're late, it's true. But what if it sounded like this? Wow, tough morning, huh? Yeah. Hey, you want to tell me what's going on? Very different. But you're still addressing it, because most people that are frantically freaking out know they're late. Now, if they come in with a toasted sub sandwich and a big drink, I'm like, what are you doing? You took time to toast it? Obviously, there's something wrong with obviously that's going to be involved in another conversation. But most people, if you walk in with, hey, let's deal with how they're feeling. Because I would kind of know and say, hey, bro, tough morning, huh? Wow, that's really impactful for you. You hate the whole ICOC. That's challenging. Can you tell me what that's about a little bit? Yeah, all the single sisters, I can't believe it. They're all sinful. Like, all of them? Yeah, well, all of them. Yeah, well, like all the brothers are sinful. Everybody, right? Only Jesus can fit that category, right? But we asked questions. We found out that it was a sister that he asked to go on a date, to go be his girlfriend by text. He barely knows. It's awesome, right? Great plan, bro. No, but we found that out. Empathetic. Man, that must be tough for you. Hey, if you would have done that differently, what would you have done differently? Do you see how kind that is? I probably would have found out if she liked me first. Oh, great insight. You can write that one down? That's really good, right? At the end of the day, I really am sharing in a gentle, kind way. I can get it across. Even addressing their concerns. Even though they share clearly with me, if I tell them what I think their concerns are, where I'm brief and specific, it lets them know I'm on the same page as you. I get it. Is there anything I'm missing? Nope, you got it. Great. Do you mind if I share what I think of this? When I address my concerns, then I'm also brief and very specific with them. Because when people are emotional, they want to hear it brief. They don't want to hear a long answer, justifying answer. I know I'm not the most person, but blah, 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 adding all this. The first part, if you do it right, it addresses their heart, and then you get stuff into their brain. Remember we talked about the salespeople? They get your heart first. Hey, Steve, man, you work out. You're kind of guy that needs this kind of car that only fits 2 people. Forget about your family. But they're not going to say it that way. But you're going to look really cool in this car, right? So at the same time, when we address our concerns, we're allowing to be able to share opinions. And once again, you got to be able to fill in the blanks with some of the stuff you know how to do. But this process, and then I check for understanding all the way through. I can use scriptures here. Hey, I understand the scripture this way. When you think of the behavior that you and I displayed, what do you think about that scripture? Right? There's some times where we can use scripture wrongly because we use it first with no context. The Bible says don't judge, right? What are you even talking about? We just don't see you judging me now. Wow, we don't even know what you're talking about. But when I set it up really well, the scripture lands very, very well. Jesus did it all the time. Hey, can I tell you a story? You know who had the most difficult conversation? Can you imagine approaching a murderous king that already murdered a man and took his wife? Would you want to be Nathan? Yeah, Nathan's like, oh, I'm going to go? Okay. He snuck that up on David. Yeah, hey, can I tell you a story, David? The sheep, the guy, he goes, oh, that man should die. Yeah, hey, punchline, ready? It's you. And Pedro's like, ooh, is this the last day of my life? It's amazing. Read the story. It's amazing. He couched it, dealing with David's heart and making sure that David ended up convicting himself. So why is this important? Because when we can do this right and we repeat this and keep sharing until you think they get you and you get them. Because now you've identified the issue. You're super curious to make sure you got the right thing you're talking about. Then you get to share what you're talking about, and they get a chance really to hear. Because I really want them to hear that I am interested in listening to what they have to say, and I believe what they believe. I believe they believe it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to love what they're saying. I don't think it has to be even true. But I believe they believe it, and that's good enough for me. Does that make sense? Thinking about your situation, when you went and shared your opinion to this brother or sister that you were in conflict with, family member, what did you say to them? What do you think you could have done differently? Or did you say it pretty well? What did you say? How did you share your opinion with them? Maybe write a few thoughts down about that. What did you say? Was it like, I want to talk about your pride because it really hurt me? That's not a very curious statement, is it? Not very curious. You're so disrespectful. Why you disrespect me all the time? And a lot of times when we don't know how, we'll just do it anyway. Versus there's a way to gently walk. Jesus was so amazing. It took quite a bit for him to be able to go Matthew 23, because there's a whole 22 chapters before it. Matthew 23 is like, you brood of vipers, woe to you. Like, it took a while before he went and laid that out. There is times for that when someone's obstinate, and I know they already know. But rarely people know the impact that they've made. And oftentimes attribute them just not knowing before evil. Most people come to church, they're not looking to be sinful and destructive. They're not. Why would they come to church? You can do that for free outside without judging eyes, right? At the end of the day, I really want to know, how am I going to approach you the best way? Okay? So I don't know if this is fleshing out this simple conversation. Go can be very unpacked. And when I coach people and teach them this or disciple them, they're like, yeah, I saw that went really bad from point one. And we don't know what we're talking about. But finally we get here, even this has parameters to go with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Here's something to consider, and this is a little more scientific, and that's fine for us who will take this in, because you have enough now to go what you need to go for. But you might have a longer situation where from your sharing, from your curiosity, you might ascertain or find out what they really want. So here's a, whoops, here we go. No, let's go for the next one here. The spread of conflict. We always want to stay at stage one, where they're willing to solve the problem and resolve the issue with us. Listen for that. If you don't hear anything of them wanting to resolve with you, you are not at that stage. And you know that it's going to need some support, because you're going to go on and on and on, talk about stuff, but they're not interested in resolving it. Well, let's talk some more. Let's convince them. I am not interested in listening to you. I only want to be heard. Well, that's not going to work, because if we're here to resolve, or maybe you just hear the vent and I'm going to share it, but I won't be able to share it because it's not where you're at. But I won't keep doing that because I'm not a punching bag. But I want to do it right. But you know what happens is, if the issue is their behavior and they don't want to acknowledge it, what's going to happen is, and I use this many times, if Jay, who's in front of me, if Jay and I are on the same side of the table and the problem's on the other side, we have a good dynamic. We're working on the issue. The behavior is the issue. The sin is the issue, not Jay. But the minute I don't know what the issue is, or I just get angry, he moves to the other side of the table. The problem gets bumped over there on the side. Jay's the problem. Now I'm making it personal. Not that Jay acts proud, but he is proud. He's the embodiment of proud. If you look in the Bible, proud, there's Jay's picture. Now it's personal. You know when that feels. The volume goes up, the temperature gets a little colder or hotter, and they moved on to the next stage. Of course, when I make it personal, I can't just talk about Jay's pride. I'm going to talk about all the other things I'm going to throw. We call it the kitchen sink moment. You see those movies where they're firing guns and missiles at the monster's not working? Then they take off their shoe. What's your shoe going to do, right? It's because they're in the kitchen sink. They're pulling everything to win. It doesn't matter. So they're actually not bringing their brother to their senses. You're bringing your brother to his knees. Nobody wants to be brought to their knees. It's a different thing. And so as we're thinking about Jay, I'm going to make it personal. And when it makes it personal, I'm going to multiply a bunch of issues. I'm going to add a whole bunch of issues. So the original issue is lost. And then what happens is, I'm going to want to find some friends that agree with me. Do you agree? No, no. Oh, pay dirt. You don't like Jay either for completely different reasons. Now it's Team David, Jay by himself. Jay's not going to have any of this. He's going to find a bunch of other friends. Now it's Team David, Team Jay. You've seen this work? That's how it works. It's beautiful, isn't it, for Satan? But then when you build enough alliances, you can open hostility because you got a gang now. Just go. People are a lot braver in a group. Gossip, open, church splits, back and forth. And you're at that hostile stage. What if all you hear is hostility the whole entire time? And we are talking about your pride. You're like, oh, they're building alliances. They got a lot of issues. They're making it very personal. They're not even here to solve the problem. And they're hostile now. So if we don't understand this, you know what's going to happen? This is what we're going to say. You two need to get into a room and work it out. What if they're in stage blue 5? And I don't know if you know, it's kind of how a flame works. It starts off white and it gets blue and hot until it's black where you get burned out. You don't see anything anymore. But it gets hotter and hotter. But can you imagine not understanding they're in a hostile stage? You put them in a room. Oh, they'll get into a room so they can get closer and shoot each other. That's what's going to happen. When you're in hostile, you can't engage in that conversation until people stop throwing rocks. You can't have that conversation. It's not possible. Because when you're shooting at each other, you're not talking very much because you're too busy dodging bullets. Right? As we think about this, when you listen to your situation, how far has it spread? If it's the stage that you can't identify, you're going to go in with the wrong solution, with the wrong idea. This can be explained a lot more in another workshop, but this is an idea to think about, where is this conflict at with my friend? And we're trying like crazy to solve it, but meanwhile, they will not stop being hostile. You can't go to resolving the issue. Why can't you just resolve the issue? Because we're at blue. And until we can find somebody in between that can stop the rock throwing, we can't get to one. They keep making it personal. Look, I own that. I'm a sinner. But this specific situation, what do you mean by this? I need to get specifics. And they may not have one, because in time, they may move away from the specifics of the issue and it's just pure emotion. And we need somebody else to be able to fish it out, maybe individually, because they don't feel safe bringing it up because you hijack their emotions. And it's not, I mean, they get triggered. It's just the way it is, and you get triggered. And in the end, this is a big mess. There might come a time where in this conversation with somebody, you can't stop them from being hostile. You can't stop it. It's just hard. And there's times where, number 6, changing the relationship may be the best way to go. And not all changing a relationship is sinful. Because sometimes it's more destructive to be together. I'm not saying, but you can't walk away throwing rocks at them. Here's a grenade, have a good time. But if you resolve it to what we call good enough, but it's probably not best to have them in the same Bible talk. Probably not best to have them in the same place, because if you do, you're only creating the conflict, because there's just too much water under the bridge. And not on this side of the cross are we going to solve it. But that's disunified. No. You're just not being smart. So the irritating thing about the scriptures is, in the argument between Paul and Barnabas, a sharp dispute they call it, God never says who's right. And it's very bad, because it leaves me all confused, because I need to know who's right. I've read books on Paul was right. I read books on Barnabas was right. I've read books that they're both wrong. Yeah, they're probably both wrong. It was an argument over a relationship. One was biased and one was just being hard, and Barnabas converted it. Like, there's so much stuff, but God never says. But he was okay with that separation of relationship. And I'll use a divorce example. Sometimes a relationship's got to change parameters in order for them to resolve the issue again. And this is what I mean. When parents fight, who suffers? The kids. They're too busy weaponizing the kids. And so maybe they need a time of separation to get sane again so they can meet the needs of the kids. I'm not saying divorce. Sometimes it involves that. I mean, we're not in that place anymore. We can't control a lot of that. But at the end of the day, for us, it may consider we need to change the relationship. We might have to switch ministries. switch churches. We can do that these days. We can. You're like, well, I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not asking you to switch. Go to a community where you can have that. Now, if every church you go to, you get to all these stages really quickly, you might want to ask yourself a question, right? This is my 8th church. I can't find anybody. You're like, yeah, I don't know where you're looking, right? Like maybe you're looking at all the wrong spots, right? You're looking for a cat in a dog show. Wrong thing, okay? But we start thinking, if I can go through all this and I can honestly, with humility and kindness, I can say, I love this brother, but I just can't live with him. I can't. And because of my own sinful nature. And a lot of times, if you're a victim of abuse, there's times that it's not safe and not right to actually go back to the abuser and apologize. It's not, or they apologize. They can't do it because it doesn't create that safety. There are times when I've had clients, they had to deal with people that have died. How do you get an apology from someone who's dead? You can't. And so they have to deal with it in such a way where they resolve it when the person's not available, meaning that they don't want to apologize. They don't care. So Romans 12, as far as it depends on me, I'm going to live at peace with everybody. And I'll let God sort it out in the end. But you can't have 48 relationships in a 50-person church like that. It could be you, right? It could be you. I really introduced a book to you that I shared it with some of the staff and some of the leaders. It's an interesting book. And if you want to write down the title, it's by a guy named Bill Eddy, Billeddy. He's a social worker, a mediator, and a lawyer. Those don't come together very often. He wrote a book called 5 Types of People That Can Ruin Your Life. Oh, a page turner for the disciples. Not really. It's a great book, and it really shows there are some really toxic relationships that this conflict model that we're using won't work because they're not working with the same rules as you are. And churches attract folks like that because they're the only places that listen to them for a while. And after a while, 5 types of people can ruin your life, give you some shepherding skills. Because you're dealing with this person and you're like wondering, how can I love them the best way? And we can get frustrated. We can get frustrated. We don't know what to do next. Does that make sense? I think even going forward, when we have this goal conversation, sharing my opinion, learning how to resolve the issue, resolving the issue is the next step because now you know what the issues are. You've shared your opinion. They've shared their opinion. And guess what happens? You actually know what issue to resolve. Sometimes the issue is not resolvable if you stay in your position. And this is what I mean. I'll show you. When you think about resolving the issue, right? Your position to take ownership looks like this. What is it that I think they need to take ownership of? Now that I've heard everything. What is it do I think they need to take ownership of? And when I say ownership, it means to take ownership in such a way where it's a biblical word to take ownership. I believe I was being proud. I believe I was being unloving. What do you need to take ownership biblically? Because you can't repent of being a jerk. You just can't. Because that can be defined 15 different ways, right? But jerkness, the qualities of jerkness involves being selfish. Took the last piece of chicken without asking. You took all the chicken without talking to anybody. That's specific. But taking ownership is, what do you think they need to take ownership? Share it with them. What do you think you need to take ownership of? And then after I take ownership, what do you think I need to offer to make it right to them? What do they need to offer to make it right for you? So this is what I mean. I've used Jay, I've stolen his wallet 3 times already. Let's say on a Friday staff meeting, we're there, and I'm in a hurry because staff meeting went long or whatever, and guess what happened? I took his wallet by accident, put it in my backpack. It wasn't intentional. And no, this is not my 5th time doing it. Like, I've done it my 1st time. You know what? I feel really bad when I find out I have his wallet. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? It's just Jay's wallet. Yeah, wouldn't you? Yeah. And you know what I got to do? I got to give Jay's wallet back. Because here's the thing. I can't take ownership and not give it back and offer to make it right. True? Because that's just a get rich quick scheme. Look, oh, well, I stole your wallets. I'm really sorry, guys. Wouldn't you want your wallet back? So for me, what I'm going to offer to make it right for Jay is I'm going to put in a $25 gift certificate to Starbucks. Here you go, bro. $25. Man, I'm really sorry I took your wallet. Most times we stop there to resolve it. But here's the problem. If I don't ask Jay, what else do you need from me to make it right? I really don't know what's happening. What if he tells me this? You know, David, it's really unfortunate, bro, that you took my wallet Friday. Because I was actually responsible for getting all the food for Tracy's party and the family. Everybody was over. And You know, it's really weird. I was at the Walmart, got all this food, and I didn't have my wallet, and they didn't let me take it out. I said I was a Christian, I was a minister. They didn't care. I was pretty embarrassed when I got home. I mean, she understood, but people are kind of mad at me. They think I'm kind of an idiot. Without realizing, I took the wallet. Do you think a $25 Starbucks card will fix that? Probably not. What if he says this, David, thank you for offering the apology. Thank you for the gift card. Would you mind coming home, though, bro? I really do need. Can you come home with me and talk to my family and tell me what you did? Tell them what you did. I'm like, I think I can do that. That'll meet the need. A lot of conflicts don't get resolved is because you offer what you think they need, not asking what they need. Now, I made this joke before. If you ask for a plane and for a house in Tuscany, I think that's a lot for a party. I'm not saying chase not important, but that's a lot, okay? I think that's out of bounds, maybe. But if it's not out of bounds, why wouldn't I do that? So if in your situation, my question would be this. What do you think you need to take ownership of in this situation? What do you think they need to take ownership of? Write that down. What have you offered or what will you offer to make it right? What do they offer to make it right? Because even in the Bible, you steal a man's donkey, you can't give it back dead. You can't do that. You got to give it back with something, or maybe a chicken that goes with it or something, right, to make it extra. So what do you think you need to offer? And the third question would be answered by you. What do you need from them? Maybe they've offered something already, and you're still feeling squirrely about it, is probably because you didn't express your needs of what you really needed to make this right. Because you gossiped about me, and I'll apologize. So you'll apologize to me. But gossip spreads to everybody. You might want to go back and correct the story for me. You sin in public, you're going to have to deal with it in public. That's going to help me. If you defamed me, oh, bro, it's okay. That's the worst thing you can say. You don't tell somebody it's okay that they've defamed you. They have to go fix that. Especially if you're someone that has a voice. If I defame Jay, it's a big deal because I have a bigger voice. If I do it on YouTube, I need to apologize on YouTube. Because I want to apologize in the least embarrassing way, but the least impactful for him. It needs to be impactful, commensurate with my sin level. It needs to be. I will lose something when I sin. Here's something that preaches you might want to take a look at. I don't have time for this one, but look at Zacchaeus. Remember the short guy? Climbed up a tree. By climbing up a tree, he gave up all dignity. And he was willing to take ownership. I'm a bad, bad man. Okay? What was his first offer to make it right? Anybody remember? Here and now, I give half of what I own to the poor. He made an offer. It was his decision of how to treat the people of Israel that he burned. But what was his next offer? If I've ripped anybody off, I will offer 4 times more. So just come to me. You know what he did? He actually gave his victims power to come back and claim things from him. You know how much money he would have left at the end? Probably nothing. Because, man, if I was an unscrupulous man, hey, you owe me money too. What? He would be stripped bare. But you know what, though? Jesus said you lost everything, but you gained everything now. That is a scripture that talks about true ownership. He owned what he did by standing up and giving him his position, his title. He offered to make it right for the people, but he gave the people the right to come back to him and take ownership of, he needs to take ownership of the impact that he didn't even know. And so when we start thinking about this, can you imagine doing it this way? Would it not resolve it? It would resolve it beautifully. It really would. And that's the moment where you're like, yeah, amen, they're talking. They're fired up. They really offered it. And even in the future, one of the things is making a plan and following up. Because if I offer Jay to have that apology, he needs to follow up and I need to follow up to go to the house. Because I'm going to, maybe I leave and I don't want to do this and I ghost him for like weeks and weeks, right? I need somebody in my life, if I've agreed to this, I'm going to have to do it swiftly. If I agree to do it and having mapping a plan and following up, it's not wrong to go a couple weeks later and say, hey, Jay, are we okay, bro? I'm really sorry about what I did. And I'm sorry about the impact, because you only have a 50th birthday once. You can't keep doing it again and again, right? You're really embarrassed. I'm really sorry about that. And at the end, if he's okay with it, I really have closed the loop when somebody sins against me and I sin against them. I know this is a long, long way, but you see how complicated it is. But it can be really more complicated if we don't do it right. And so you think about how complicated the study series are, but without them, we have no framework of how to help someone become a Christian. This is but one framework when we think about it. Framework. So when you start thinking about the framework offered as a tool, who do you need to have a go conversation with? Who do you need to have that conversation with? If you live in a church full of sinners, sooner or later, someone's going to bump into you. You're going to bump into somebody. You may not always be aware of it. Here's another question. When are you going to do that? Yeah, bro, amen, amen. Sooner the better. Just not here, okay? Not here when you go to work. When you go to work tomorrow at church, not work, but you're working on your relationships at church tomorrow. Don't go up to the preacher 10 minutes before the sermon. Can I talk to you? Please don't do that because you make us want to quit, okay? So what if you don't know how to do this? Who's going to help you with that? Do you have names on the page? What if you don't have anybody to help you with it? Who do you think can help you with it? Write their name down, because this is the rawest time for your heart to actually have that conversation. Because what you're thinking about right now and that you don't want to go do is the seed of a very large conflict in the future. Nobody just walks away from God and others because they start off one day big. It's always these little things. Hey, what skills do you think you need to learn and to grow in order to do this? I would do this, okay? Say 10 out of 10 is the worst conflict you've ever had in degree. Don't go after that one first, right? You don't want to do that. You want to go after the 1, 2, 3 out of 10 and practice it a little bit. People that are a little more gracious with you. And then after you work your way up, you can deal with a 10. You can. Don't start off with a 10. You don't do that. I mean, you can if you want, but don't call me, right? Because definitely you've walked into some trouble here. So here's some things to think about here. There's a really great book by a guy named Ken Sande. It's called Resolving Everyday Conflict. It's a Christian-based book. It's really cool principles of how to resolve conflict. It goes through some ideas that I presented here differently. I don't agree with everything that he says, but it's a really great book. There's a lot of great books that are written by him and his cohort. Here's another one. Just in case you have issues in your family, I'm just guessing here, but Peacemaking for Families, written also by the same guy. A biblical guide to managing conflict in your home. Just in case you have some conflict in your home. Just in case. I'm just, making sure. And last but not least, if you got a real big problem, sometimes you want to reach out. I'm pretty quick with emails. I'm not going to do counseling for you. That's not what it is. But sometimes you can just share something simple with me. I go, so here's a great book for that. Or here's a great resource for that. Or, hey, do you remember this slide? This might help you. I'm pretty responsive with emails. Because what I can do for you, I can probably give you a half an hour, and it's pretty quick. You might go, why do I do that? It's because I'd rather share this with everybody so that it doesn't become something huge and you lose your faith. I have an email. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Don't worry about the ICOC Peacemakers program. That's for the church leaders and leaders and stuff like that. But you can always look it up. It's kind of cool looking. But LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm pretty responsive. So, as we kind of close with you, I want you to think about the most important thing that you walked out of today with for you when it comes to this goal conversation. What's the most important thing for you? I would love for you to write that down. Because remember, everything's important, nothing's important. What was most important for you? Something that sticks out of your brain right here. You don't have to take notes for this even, but write down or maybe think about what's the point that you got out of this. It might be a sentence, it might be a word. It could be curious. It could be anything, because you can refer back to this material. Even if you fail miserably, it's okay to look back and see where you missed. Because sometimes you fail miserably the conversation. You can't even go back and look, where did I miss? I don't even know, and you're going to repeat it again and again. Okay? So I'd love for you to look at the person beside you. Again, if there's no one beside you, find someone beside you. Share one or two things that you really got out of this, what was important for you. Because as you share it, it comes out of your mouth, it actually stays in your brain a little bit, a little more. So take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll close it out, okay? Talk to the person beside you, or if you don't want to talk to them, find somebody else to talk to. Groups of 2, 3. What was the most important thing for you that you got out of today? So, thank you, partners, to say thank you so much. And you turn your attention. Thank you so much. High five, whatever it is. There's a lot of information that was shared today. And if you want to practice it, it's really cool. I love to hear stories of how it worked out for you. I did something like this in the Philippines about 7, 8 years ago, and I still get stories from them. They talk, I really approached my dad. And the coolest one was, he approached my dad, he studied the Bible, became a Christian. It's like, wow, that's okay, that's a little extra. Like, thank you for shaming us all, I just resolved it with my butcher. That was all there was, right? But there's some great stories, because what it is, it really allows us to see the fruit of some of this work. It really works. This crosses cultures, but there's ways you can integrate it into cultural pieces. I can help you with that as well. But as a disciple, can you imagine doing conflict just a little bit better? And then get blessings instead of curses. So I really, I really want to thank Jay and Mary. I know she was the person that brought me in, so she's responsible. And thank you so much for bringing me in. Okay? So we're getting done about 15 minutes early. And so if you have any questions, I'm up here. I'm not really going anywhere. I don't know if they need to kick you out of the building, but you do have church tomorrow morning. And also, if you got a big, long thing you want to talk about, don't create conflict with the people behind you. They're like, what are you doing, right? So this is not a therapy session. It's not cathartic. If you got a quick question, I have no problem answering it on the floor, off mic, of course. And also, don't use names and numbers and things like that. If there are long historical conflicts, it's not something I can deal with in the meeting. Just giving you that caveat, okay? But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for everything.